I love those who do not first seek for a reason beyond the stars, for going down and being sacrifices, but sacrifice themselves to the earth, that the earth may one day be the Overman's. The Overman crept upon us at first as a whisper and a shadow, but now it strikes us as a bolt of lightning from the stormy clouds. Christ, too, was a fiery bolt sent from the clouds to set the world on fire. Christ prepared the way for the Overman. In our evolutionary and mythological journey from the origins of man to the Superman, Christ mirrors the figure of Prometheus. Like Prometheus, Christ was a type of the Overman, a free spirit who stood apart from the herd and sacrificed himself in service of a higher ideal. Just as Prometheus stole the fire of technology from Olympus and gifted it to humanity, Christ stole the fire of divinity from the priestly caste and gave it to the people. In my video on Cain and Abel, we discussed the proclivity of the priestly caste to calcify and be corrupted by the life-haters, the resentful, power-hungry tyrants who pass themselves off as spiritual or intellectual experts in order to exert their control over the unwitting herd. Through the doctrine of baptism, Jesus allowed the individual to have direct contact with the spirit of life without having to go through the priestly caste. Symbolically, baptism represents a return to the state of absolute harmony between the will of the individual and the divine spirit of life. A return to Eden, where man was not separated from his instincts, and his instincts were a pure expression of the will of life and the will to life. Jesus was a free spirit, the type of man who Nietzsche addressed his books to and called upon to become the new philosophers capable of putting forth their own values and philosophizing through bold and daring action. Jesus catalyzed the first transvaluation of all values by completely inverting the moral system of the classical empires. Nietzsche believed that this inversion was detrimental to humanity because the Christian moral system values meekness over strength, beauty of the soul over beauty of the body, self-sacrifice over the triumph of the individual, and so on. In short, Christianity promotes values which, when consistently reinforced over hundreds of years, inevitably create a weaker, gentler type of human being, and thus ensure the triumph of the mob and the herd over the extraordinary individual. These values are therefore anti-life, because life, above all else, strives for the creation of ever more beautiful, strong, and powerful individual forms. But despite his condemnation of Christianity, Nietzsche recognized in Christ a free spirit who stood apart from the herd, a higher type of human being who embraced life fully and had the daring to transvalue all values which had come before him. In Will to Power, Nietzsche even goes so far as to describe the Overman as the Roman Caesar with Christ's soul. Therefore, though Christianity's moral system, generally speaking, may be an impediment to the creation of higher types, because of its emphasis on the values of the herd, the virtue of the meek, the practice of asceticism, and the submission of the body to the soul, Christ himself played a vital role in preparing the way for the Overman. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche writes, "Preludes of Science. Do you really believe that the sciences would ever have originated and grown up if the way had not been prepared by magicians, alchemists, astrologers, and witches, whose promises and pretensions first had to create a thirst, a hunger, a taste for hidden and forbidden powers? Indeed, infinitely more had to be promised than could ever be fulfilled in order that anything at all might be fulfilled in the realm of knowledge. Even as these preludes and preliminary exercises of science were not by any means practiced and experienced as such, the whole of religion might yet appear as a prelude and an exercise to some distant age. Perhaps religion could have been the strange means to make it possible for a few single individuals to enjoy the whole self-sufficiency of a god and his whole power of self-redemption. The alchemists, convinced that there was a secret of great value hidden in matter, relentlessly pursued their visions of transformation, gold, and immortality, unaware that such pursuits would lead to the birth of science and man's mastery over matter. Unconsciously, they strove towards an ideal, unaware of what they were building the foundations for. Christianity served the same purpose for the creation of the Ubermensch. For hundreds of years, Europe's consciousness was captivated by the image of Christ, the ideal human being, half god, half man, a superman who refused to submit his will to the herd. Just as alchemy prepared man's spirit for the pursuit of science, Christianity cultivated a hunger in man's spirit for the emulation of a superhuman ideal, and disciplined man's will towards the pursuit of that ideal. Just as Catholic typology created the framework which we have used in this series to understand the Ubermensch as a teleological principle and to examine his types and forerunners in our mythologized history of mankind's evolution and development, Christ created the framework for the ideal of the Superman. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche writes, "On new philosophers, we have no other choice. On spirits that are strong and original enough to give impetus to opposing value judgments, and to revalue, to reverse eternal values. On forerunners, on men of the future, who in the present will forge the necessary link to force a 1,000-year-old will onto new tracks. They will teach humans that their future is their will, that the future depends on their human will." We free spirits are now ready to embark on the second transvaluation of all values, and shift the ancient will towards the Promethean ideal, the Herculean ideal, the Christian ideal, onto new tracks. It is our task to be the so-called necessary links between this ancient will and the ideal which it posited. It is our task to harness this will towards the creation of the Ubermensch and the birth of a new, heroic ideal. The struggle against Plato, or to put it more clearly, for the common people, the struggle against thousands of years of Christian ecclesiastical pressure, for Christianity is Platonism for the common people, has created a splendid tension of the spirit in Europe, such as the earth has never seen. With this kind of tension in our bow, we can now shoot at the most remote targets. We free spirits have it still, all the distress of the spirit and all the tension of its bow. And perhaps the arrow too, the task, who knows, the target.
The whole universe will